Hi everyone, so I've decided to upgrade the baby snails tank as it's getting a little bit too small for them, but I don't have a tank in between the size of their baby tank and the adult tank that Rick's in. So I decided to get this little tub as a grow out tub. It's perfectly fine, I've just got to put air holes in obviously. So this is just a cheap £2.50 food storage container. I tend to prefer to use food grade storage containers as I've never had any problems with those. First thing I need to do is give it a wipe over, and I'm just using some water in a little pump sprayer I've got. This is just regular tap water that I've left standing out overnight for 24 hours to let the chlorine evaporate. Although normal tap water, I've never had a problem with that with my snails, other than a bit of lime scale on the shells if you spray the shells a lot. So what I'm doing is just using some water and wiping over the inside of the tub with a cloth. Obviously you don't want to put any chemicals in the tub because it's bad for the snails, and I only ever clean my tanks with warm water and a clean paper towel, so that's what I use. Now, the first thing you're going to need is some substrate, and I know this is really dry, but it's okay, I'm going to put water on in a minute. This is some cocoa fibre, and what I'm doing here is adding a bit at a time and spraying it, because this has been, first of all, it was soaked, and then it's been left in my bucket for a couple of days because I used the rest of it to top up Rick's tank to give him some more burrowing depth. So this has dried out a little bit, but it's easy enough to re-soak, so it's not a problem. And obviously I've got what's left of the cocoa fibre block. So first of all, I'm just going to soak that in some water. This is just room temperature water. You can use warm water as well, but you need to make sure it's not going to be too hot for the snails. You don't want to burn them or anything. So I'm just using room temperature water here because I was doing this on a warm day. And as you can see, because the brick's been pre-soaked, it will crumble up quite easily. I'm just going to add some more water. You want to get this nice and soaked, but you don't want it where it's like dripping wet. You want it so it's nice and moist, but not too much. I'll show you in a bit the consistency that you need to go for. You can mix some peat-free soil in with this as well, like some peat-free topsoil. I haven't got any at the minute, but mine do fine on cocoa fibre anyway. And over time this breaks down a little bit more anyway and starts to look more like soil. So I'm just crumbling it all down. And I've filled this tub. I know it's only a shallow tub, but they don't need the height because they're only little. I filled the tub about halfway up, so it's probably about twice the depth of the biggest snail in the tub, if not a bit more. So they've got plenty of burrowing depth, because I tend to find the babies prefer to burrow. I have tried putting a hide in their tank before now. They don't like it. They still burrow in the soil, or they hide under the lettuce leaves or whatever I've put in, so I'll just do that. So I'm just making sure this is all nice and moistened down, because I don't want this dry, because it'll just stick to the snails and cause problems. And also we want to maintain the humidity and moisture in the tank. So as you can see here, I'm putting plenty of water on. I've got it on a fine mist, so it's not just chucking loads of water on at a time. It's little bits at a time, and then mixing the soil around and adding a little bit more as needed until I get the right consistency. And I'll show you in a bit when I get to the right consistency. Make sure you soak any bits that are dry. So I turn the nozzle just so I can mix a little bit more in a bit quicker. That's all nice and mixed. You want it so that when you squeeze it, it sticks together like this. And then when you chuck it in your hand, it crumbles apart. So solid, and then falls apart when you just throw it in the air a little bit. That way you know the soil's moist enough, but it's not too soggy for them. And then it's a case of just very gently pressing it down, not too hard, but just gently tapping down the surface just to smooth it off a little bit so you can wipe the sides of the tub down, because it's nice to be able to see your snails without a load of soil on the side in the way. And then I'm going to get the snails, and as you can see in a second, their tank is quite a lot smaller, and as you can see they're getting quite big, so I want them to have some more room. I could leave them in the little tank for a little bit longer, but I struggle to fit the amount of food that I need into the tank, and also I'm in the process of getting them used to munching on cuttlefish, and I can't fit that very well in the tank that they've got, because the only thing I don't like about the calcium biscuits is they go soggy quick. They'll still eat it, it's fine, but I just prefer to use cuttlefish with my snails because it lasts a lot longer before going all, it doesn't tend to go squishy and weird like the calcium block. And as you can see, I'm just transferring the food that they already had in there. It was a little bit of leftover salad from the other day. And I'll add some cabbage leaves in a bit as well. That's the calcium block I added the other day. And they got a little piece of cuttlefish and another calcium block, but you'll see in a minute I change it for a bigger piece because they're starting to munch it now, because when they were smaller, I think it was a bit too hard for them. And obviously their calcium requirements, they require quite a lot at the moment. But you don't want to sprinkle it all over the food because you don't want to overdose them on it. You want them to be able to choose as much as they like. I'm using this tiny little shell as a little shallow water dish at the minute, and I've got it pressed into the soil. I know it's not ideal, but it's the only small container I've got. Just for a few drops of water, and I'm finding they're quite enjoying sitting in the little shell and having a drink. And I also have added a bit of cucumber because when I clean them out once a week, they get a bit of cucumber as a treat. And you'll see in a bit, I'll add some cabbage leaves as well, just to give them some extra nutrition. And I'll also put a little bit of snail mix in the tank because it's snail mix day. And what I'm doing here is obviously I'm just rinsing off the cabbage leaf. I'm taking out some of the lettuce because that was treat day the other day, and adding the cabbage, which is what they would normally have, and then promptly putting a load of soil in the water dish. So obviously you want to empty that out as best as you can. And what I like about this size tub is it gives me the chance to put in a lot more veg so they can have a lot more to eat because they're starting to get through the food quite well. And they like to hide underneath the cabbage and lettuce leaves. So I'm providing plenty of places for them to hide as well. And obviously they'll burrow into the soil. Like I said, that's what these normally do, is they normally burrow in the soil underneath their food, pop up and have an eat, and then they go back down. So that's what I'm providing for them here. As they get bigger, I'll provide hides and stuff. I haven't got any sphagnum moss left at the moment, so I would have preferred to put a little bit of moss in here as well, but never mind. I'll just make sure that I spray this regularly to keep it nice and damp in there, all nice and humid. And I keep this in a nice warm room, which is currently about 23, 24 degrees, it's warm for me. That's degrees Celsius, by the way. And they're perfectly happy at that temperature, so no problems there. Then I give the little snails a bit of a bath, a little bit of a wash, because they were covered in soil. And then it's just a case of gently placing them onto the cabbage leaves. I had one that didn't want to let go, so I just had to get my finger just under the edge of his little foot to break the suction so he would come off. The rest were just placed on the lid because they'd already moved a little bit. So they were easy to pick up. And as you can see, they're getting a decent size. They're doing quite well. The two smaller ones have started to grow quite well as well, so hopefully they'll catch up. But as you can see, this gives them a lot more room. They can roam around. They're not too far away from their food, so I've got food all around the tank, so it's dead easy for them to find. So they won't have to roam around all night trying to find food, because obviously that will waste energy that they could use for growing. And also it means I can put a lot more food in there, which will keep them going. And obviously I'll check them daily anyway. And hopefully they'll get into the cuttlefish a bit more. And then I'm just using my glue gun, just using the nozzle off it to melt some holes into the lid. And when you put the holes in the lid, you want to go from the inside out, because then any rough edges of plastic are on the outside, not the inside, because obviously you don't want to risk the snails catching themselves on rough plastic or anything, because they will climb all over the lid. So I'm just cutting some air holes into here, and what I do is I just do 2 rows of air holes, and then I monitor the tank overnight. If it looks like it's too steamed up and stays there's like too much condensation in the tank, I'll put a few more holes in, or I'll just leave it as is, depending. Sometimes I have to put 1 or 2 more in, but not very often. They don't need loads of air holes, just enough to obviously get some oxygen in. And I could, if I wanted to, put some in the tub at the side, but I prefer to put them in the lid because it gives me the chance to be able to see them nice and clearly through the sides. Like so. And then it's just a case of snipping off from the outside the little bit of plastic that's been pushed through by the end of my glue gun. I have used before a wood burning tool to do that, but I find it smells a lot more, and I like using the end of the glue gun because it will give me that rounded shape, which is what I'm after. And because the whole nozzle of the glue gun gets hot, I can do various sizes of holes, so that'll work out better. So here what I'm doing is I'm just snipping off the little bits of plastic off the outside, just to make sure the holes are nice and open. And that's it. That's how to make a little grow out tub for your baby snails. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.